Greetings, my brilliant and beloved people of YouTube. I keep telling these slow, far behind folks that if you are not tuned into YouTube, then you just don't know what time it is. These dummies are being played by the worst devils in the universe. And because it is clandestinely done behind their backs and above their heads, they cannot see it. In other words, they just cannot disseminate the reasons for the chaos, even though they know the chaos is there.
A number of things that I've heard from people in the Pentagon, that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area that Peter's.
Wow.
Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it? The buzzword
in the Pentagon, in the military circles that are in the know about the cover-up here, they kind of, in whispered tones, talk about the return of the Sumerian gods. And they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
Well, could be.
Who are the Anunnaki? The Anunnaki, which means those of royal blood, princely offspring, or those who Anu sent from heaven to earth, are believed to be a group of gods or deities that inhabited the earth during the time of the ancient Sumerian culture in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia itself means land between rivers and sits between the Tigris and the Euphrates river system, which is modern-day Iraq. As for the Sumerians, they were from the land of Sumer, which translates into land of the civilized kings, and is the first recorded civilization of mankind. What's interesting to note, however, is that this first civilization appears to be quite advanced and far from primitive. The Sumerians were responsible for inventing such things as commerce, trade, science, writing in the form of something called cuneiform, astronomy, and even had the first monarchy. Not bad for being the first known civilization, right? According to the Enuma Elish, which consists of 7 tablets in an ancient Babylonian narrative telling the story of man's creation, it appears that the Anunnaki, also called the Anu, are the creators of mankind, and that man's purpose is to serve the gods. These beings were not from this world, but were from the heavens. They can be found throughout Sumerian culture in writings, drawings, and statues, some of which portray the Anunnaki holding a holy grail, which is supposed to depict a special bloodline they've created. What's also interesting to note is that ancient biblical text mentions an offspring called the Nephilim, which inhabited the earth in the early days of mankind. Just as the Enuma Elish depicts the story of man being created by the gods, the book of Genesis also tells a creation story and mentions unearthly beings called the Nephilim. Genesis 6:4 states, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." Who or what were these sons of God that had children with the daughters of men? Could this be the bloodline that ancient Sumerians were also referring to? One theorist, Zechariah Sitchin, who has spent years studying Sumerian artifacts and Sumerian writing, believes that the Anunnaki genetically engineered man by crossbreeding their DNA and the DNA of Homo erectus. Their reason for doing this was to use Homo sapiens as a slave race for mining gold from the earth, a job which the Anunnaki themselves were sent to do. But why gold? Great question, and that is another story.
My name is Dr. Eric Norton. and I have worked as an outside consultant for the NSA and NASA for going on 12 years now. My security clearance at present warrants my need to take the appropriate steps to keep myself protected the best I can. One of those steps is not to give too much information about myself. What I can tell you is that I have worked as an outside consultant on many projects led by our government, the U.S. government, including with, more recently, the Meteoroid Environment Office, or MEO, which is involved in several research projects with installations located throughout North America. The underlying goal of these projects is to gain a better understanding of the meteoroid environment so that the MEO environment models can be improved. We basically monitor the skies, track meteors and other objects in space, and to date have made some very interesting observations, to say the least. Some very chilling observations, in fact. Observations that, if revealed to the public, would not only change the game forever, and we're not just talking the breakdown of all religions and a total overhaul of everything we've ever known about the universe and space, but we are talking the breakdown of society itself. We are talking about a subject matter that, even up until today, carries with it a level of disbelief amongst the majority of the worldwide community. On January 22nd, 2012, I was called to the McDonald Observatory in Texas, which happens to be the second largest optical telescope in the continental U.S. I received a phone call from an associate with the observatory and was booked that night on a flight out to Texas, where I was met by an agent reporting to be with Homeland Security. Now, when I arrived at the McDonald Observatory, I was met by a second man with Homeland Security, and by this time I was really dumbfounded as to what was going on as it pertained to me. I had never dealt with matters of national security, so I was really lost as to what it was that could be so urgent that it warranted this almost security guard-like behavior from these two agents. I was quickly shuffled back into the main observatory chamber, where I met four other gentlemen who were involved with the operations of the observatory. And what they showed me was of such a shock to even my belief system that, once confirmed, I had to sit down and take a moment to get a hold of myself. What I saw, I can best explain in my own words as an array of massive three-dimensional black structures in space, in straight line formation, advancing in the direction of planet Earth. I know this because I was shown images taken 3 months prior which depicted the very obvious course of direction by these things, which had moved millions upon millions of miles closer within just months. Now, I was there with the understanding that it was my job to aid in gauging exactly what type of composition these objects were made up of, and whether they were man-made, natural, or unnatural to anything seen before it. Now, using the scientific instruments provided by NASA that are available to us today, we were able to discern the fact that these were not naturally occurring materials, and that they were, to our best but limited understanding, some sort of metallic, carbon-reinforced material, several thousand times the structural hardness of what we have today, whether it be natural occurring diamonds or carbon nanotube-type material. The objects seemed to also be emitting some sort of force field that deflected space particles from touching the surface, almost like the magnetic field around the Earth, which shields it from the sun's rays and solar material. The objects were getting so close that with our telescopes we could see the structural features of these things in high detail. They were shaped in the best way I can describe as a three-dimensional L-shaped craft. I use the word craft loosely, as we do not know if these things are piloted or vehicles at all in the strictest sense. All we knew is that they were moving, and moving fast. By January 2013, the objects had been tracked to about 200,000 miles past the planet Mars. Once they reached this point, almost instantaneously the objects vanished from our telescope lenses. I mean, completely vanished, and as if they had activated some sort of invisibility shield at the flick of a switch. That's the best way I can describe it. We couldn't see them on any form of radar we have, or any other visual medium available. We were left scratching our heads, and by this time, I knew that the upper echelons of the U.S. government were worried about these things, because I was under a constant 24/7 guard by Secret Service agents, who kept a close eye on me every single day since late 2012. I did not go home, go to the grocery store, or wake up in the morning without the reality of knowing that I was being watched. Some very powerful, high-up people were keeping an eye on me and the work that we were doing regarding these objects. Although I was never told about this, It was obvious with what I saw going on around me and the personnel involved. So for nearly the entire year of 2013, we watched the skies in disbelief of what had occurred. We didn't know what was going on or where these things were. According to my calculations, these things would have been so close to us by now that we would have no problem seeing them in the night sky had they stayed visible to us. But as I said, we didn't know whether they were still coming in the recorded direction or if they had simply left the solar system altogether. We just didn't know enough to gauge what was going on and what these things were really here for. I was sent home awaiting orders to continue my work as needed, and for some 6 months I did not hear so much a phone call regarding the situation. It wasn't until all of this commotion regarding the government shutdown, particularly of all the space surveillance projects, that I made some calls to see what was going on. Sure enough, what I had feared the most had been confirmed after I contacted a close friend whom I had worked with confidentially on this project at the McDonald Observatory. I asked him what was going on, and was there something to all of these space monitoring programs being shut down, including NASA, and was there cause to worry? My colleague sounded extremely unnerved when I spoke with him. At one point, it was almost as if he was trembling in his speaking. And I asked him, what is going on here? It was then that he told me that the objects had reappeared and had positioned themselves behind the moon. It was then that he told me that the objects had reappeared and had positioned themselves behind the moon. The blackout of all space monitoring programs was essential to keeping the lid on what had happened. I did not speak with my colleague long due to the fact that he was not supposed to be speaking with anyone and was risking even his own life even calling me back. But what I do know is that these objects reappeared sometime earlier this month and positioned themselves in a circular type alignment, which allowed them to dock to the backside of the moon, or just above the backside of the moon, so as to remain virtually invisible to sky watchers. The things are up there, and they're just beyond our view of sight when we look up at the moon. The things are up there, and they're just beyond our view of sight when we look up at the moon.
The media has brainwashed the chosen children of God, which is the 12 tribes, generational children of Jacob's 12 sons, which are God's chosen people. They also deceive the entire world to believe in the Bible that the God of this world, Jesus, is a white, pale, blonde-haired, blue-eyed God. We have been brainwashed, y'all. And I'm talking to the 12 tribes of Israel, God's chosen people. It's time to wake up. Okay, we're going to start in our Bible that Jesus' hair was like wool, Revelation 1:14. We do know that the Caucasian race have flowing hair like horses. As you can see, here's the proof, okay, that they have hair like horses, flowing hair. All right, we know the Aramaic people, which they try to say Jesus was Arab, have flowing hair like horses too. There's only one race that have hair like wool. You guessed it. The black Hebrew Israelites of America, the Negroes of America. We have hair like our Creator. This is not our Lord. This is an imposter. Now let's get on the skin tone of Jesus, starting with his feet. Revelation 1:15, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. That was one hint of his color. Now let's see the color of brass turn when it's burned. Check this out.
Okay, now watch what happens to this brass as they burn it. And sorry for the strong language that these guys are using, but pay attention what this young man say at the end. He gonna say your brass is burning. Check this out, and look what color it turned.
More cleaner for everyone. That's fucked up, dude. I hope the camera got that. I didn't mean
it did. It's been recording the whole fucking time.
Dude, I didn't mean to do that.
Now your fucking brass is burning.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's so retired to do.
The Lord God knew that people are going to argue and say, well, that was just his feet. Well, then let's get on the arms in Daniel 10:5-6. And I quote, it says, his body also was like in barley. In his face is as the appearance of lightning. In his eyes as lamps of fire, means red. In his arms, in his feet, like in color to polished brass. That means even his arm was black. So that makes up for Jesus' whole entire skin. Basically, Jesus is blacker than Wesley Snipes. That's right. blacker than Wesley.
Peace, peace. This your host, Selah Shalom. And this is the Cosmon Teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible of Waspi. And today I was searching the internet, the YouTube, and I came across some information that was interesting. I came across two accounts of two different sources where they described extraterrestrials as being black. We always hear about the white extraterrestrials, such as the Palladians, the Nordics, and even some of the Andromedans. But now we have an account of black extraterrestrials on crafts.
Hello, my name is Amaury Rivera. I live in Puerto Rico, and back in 1988 I was working in a nightclub, and there was a musical group there. One of my cousins wanted me to photograph the musical group, and she loaned me a camera with some film. On my way back home, I encountered two small beings, two small strange men, which I didn't think were men from outer space. And they took me somewhere where there were other people besides myself, other human people, like from Puerto Rico, I guess. From here, another human being showed up. He claimed to be from a distant planet. He was dressed in black. He had a dark skin, but he was not a Negro. He had a dark skin, but he was not a Negro. Another human being showed up. He claimed to be from a distant planet. He was dressed in black. He had a dark skin, but he was not a Negro.
So are you not positing the idea that those vehicles contain, beings who are, maybe like us?
Yeah, I only go along with government images. And if you want to know about people kind of thing, there is the ship that picked up the Voyager capsule at Alameda Naval Shipyard, and they have a picture there of I think it's the Apollo flight that Buzz and Neil were on. But anyway, there is one image there that shows black people getting off.
So people with dark skin getting off.
Not dark, black.
Black skin.
Really black, yeah.
Jesus is blacker than Wesley Snipes. That's right. Blacker than Wesley.
Greetings, 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 Nazir Ra. Are there black extraterrestrials? Gradations of Anunnaki going up to your Etherians. They manifest as so-called Anunnaki. I want to break this whole thing down. But I wanted to put on that Parliament. Parliament talks about partying on the mothership. Parliament talks about we are here to reclaim the pyramids. Star Child here. Why is that? Why is this brother, he's talking about funk music and dance music. Why is he talking about Sweet Chariot, Let Me Ride? Swing Down, Sweet Chariot. It's talking about the New Jerusalem. It's talking about, let me go ahead and go in.
there that shows black people getting off.
So people with dark skin getting off.
Not dark, black.
Black skin.
Really black. Yeah.
Were they tall?
Yes.
Very tall?
Yeah.
How tall? Do you know?
Well, they got out the doorway. I don't know how high that is, but
well, what?
Safe. 7 feet would be probably a conservative estimate.
Now, you just heard it from a scientist who worked at NASA. You just heard it. 7 foot at least. That's a midget when you talk about these particular beings. The real height is 9 plus, 8.5 to 9 to 12 feet tall. Master geneticists. So you can imagine what their bodies look like. You can imagine how powerful they are. They were master geneticists, and they were the ones who originally upgraded human beings. These are the individuals where it says, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. So not only does the original man look like these entities or gods, but they act like them as well. Just like your mama says, you know what, you just like your father. Say absolutely, thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the compliment. Our fathers, our divine fathers and mothers come from the stars. Let me go ahead and go in, because a lot of people are talking about this, and this stuff is about to be revealed very shortly. And it's going to change everything. It's going to change everything. So you have many different life forms in this particular galaxy. You have insectoids. You have reptoids. You have everything you can, anything that can exist does exist. Anything that can exist does exist. Process that.
From here, another human being showed up. He claimed to be from a distant planet. He was dressed in black. He had a dark skin, but he was not a Negro. He had a long black hair up to the shoulders, and he spoke to us with the mouth, verbally, and no telepathic speaking. He showed us various projections, which looked very real, the projections. And he informed us about a whole bunch of things that are even still incredible to me. Then they returned me to...
What did this holographic projection show?
The holographs were mainly... the first one that I can remember was like a short trip through space. We saw where he came from, where he's said to be from. We saw his people. We saw the houses that they use. And the second one was about a meteor or rock falling to Earth in the near future, which is going to cause a lot of havoc in the world. This would fall. It's going to fall in very near the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and those other small islands. But it's going to affect the whole world, not just Puerto Rico. The last one is that they projected was showing us how there was only going to be one government on the planet Earth. They'll be living on some sort of artificial island that's going to be floating in the middle of a dark, black, dirty sea.
I keep telling these slow, far behind folks that if you are not tuned into YouTube, then you just don't know what time it is.